Mexico is not one of the biggest, I mean, it's a fairly large country, but it's not the size of Brazil or the size of Indonesia or something. And yet, if you add up all the beetles and all the birds and all the mammals and what have you, it's actually the third richest country for biodiversity in the whole world, which is pretty stunning. And then you come down to the south, and Chiapas is the richest state in the whole of the country. And then you come to the Lacandona forest, and this is the richest forest in the whole of the formerly everywhere forested state of Chiapas. So this is an incredibly rich place. And over the whole of Chiapas, something like 80% of all the butterflies in Mexico occur here. 66% of all of Mexico's bird species are occurring here. And it's the same kind of high percentages for trees and for orchids and all kinds of stuff. So this place is incredibly diverse. And in this area, the Lacandona forest, there is a biodiversity of quite extraordinary magnitude. And there's a biosphere reserve, the Monte Azul Biosphere Reserve, which sort of protects some of it in a classical way. But of course, there's also the indigenous people here, which are also very, very important for the protection of the whole area.
There are 400,000 people living in 200 different human settlements in the Lacandona jungle. And neither the government or anyone else has been able to reconcile the conflicting interests and activities that are related to the jungle. And of course, the living conditions for people haven't improved. And so poverty and displacement continue to push people further into the jungle. And also, I mean, the Lacandona, like forests all over the world, is being destroyed. It's threatened by US and multinational corporations.
In a way, rainforest destruction, I mean, okay, yes, there's the climatic impact of rainforest destruction, which could eventually affect people in the United States. But there's a whole lot of other effects as well, which are perhaps a little more subtle, and which you don't necessarily think about straight off. Now, every year a whole load of the birds that are in the US disappear. Where do they go? Well, quite a lot of them actually come down here. About 60 species actually come down here. And they don't just sort of disperse randomly once they're down here. They get south of the border and start whizzing around all over, randomly around Mexico. They go to very, very specific places. And people have done things like they put bands on the birds, and you can trace where the birds move, and you can often find that they're going to the same place year after year after year, and their offspring will go to the same place year after year after year. Now, I mean, that means that they have a very, very rigid flight path which they follow. Now, what happens is that if an area to which they traditionally go gets destroyed, then they get very confused, basically, and often they simply die. They don't know where to go next. They don't know how to forage anywhere else. They just, they may get eaten by something because they're wandering around like, what the heck's gone? Where's the forest gone? Where was that tree? And so you get big diminutions in population.
Un sistema mundial hace posible que el crimen se haga gobierno en México. Un sistema nacional hace posible que el crimen mande en Chiapas. Luchando en las montañas del sureste mexicano, luchamos por México, por la humanidad y contra el neoliberalismo.
They're losing their lives. For them it's not just, oh, I'll lose my livelihood. For them it's, I'm going to lose my life. They take my land away. What am I going to do? Am I going to be a beggar in Mexico City? Am I going to be a migrant worker in the United States? No, I want to remain on my land. I want to be able to retain some kind of dignity, in terms of who I am and how my family lives. And this sentiment is what historically has caused social turmoil in Mexico. And in 1910, it caused a revolution. I mean, Emiliano Zapata's battle was about the people's claim, the indigenous people's claim to the land. And the result of that was Article 27, which guaranteed them communal land, the ownership of communal land.
Despite the incredible natural wealth of Chiapas, its people are the poorest in all of Mexico. Chiapas is home to the highest percentage of indigenous people in Mexico, most of whom are of Mayan descent. Chiapanecos produce 54% of Mexico's hydropower, 13% of its corn, 13% of its gas, 5% of its timber, and 4% of its beans and oil. Nearly half of the people who live in Chiapas have no running water.
Todos los pueblos que están en resistencia, las comunidades que no reciben nada del gobierno, pues ciertamente su situación económica, su situación social está sumamente crítica. Ahora que también hay una situación así general de que han subido los precios de las mercancías, hay mucha carencia pues en todo. En todas las comunidades lo sienten mucho más todavía. Los que están en resistencia pues viven una situación ahora pues muy difícil, porque ya no pueden salir ni siquiera a trabajar fuera de su comunidad como antes lo hacían. Cuando no estaban los campamentos militares, cuando no había una presión militar, mucha gente salía a otros pueblos a buscar trabajo con el fin de conseguir dinero y regresa a su casa con un poco de dinero. Pero ahora ya no hay esa posibilidad, están controlados y no hay posibilidad de buscar trabajo aquí cerca. Así que la situación está muy difícil ahora.
I feel personally that we are obliged to do all we can to help indigenous people have their lands, their dignity, their way of life, and really to let them develop at their own pace, you know, without us forcing change upon them. And the intrusion of the market, it is horrendous how quickly it begins to sever community ties, because it generates individualism when, in fact, as we've been hearing, you know, throughout the days here, that essentially it's community we should be dealing with, and it is the way that community holds together that is the strength which enables us to care for our environment.
For those of us in the United States who fight for social justice, who have been committed to a different vision for humanity, you know, sometimes we say, well, you know, that's over there. You know, that's like, I can't relate to it. My work is you know, affirmative action, or my work is fighting, you know, the devastation of the forest or whatever in the States. But people have to begin to understand that that's not the way the world works these days. The world works without borders. These transnationals work without borders. They're accountable to no one. They don't consider the borders a reality. You know?